There's a flavor to Cuba that is indisputable: the music, the people, and the old cars that have come to define what is both unique about this place, but also how it has become mired in the past.
If you look at a country like Iran and North Korea and relations with the United States, you're looking at countries that can be considered, particularly North Korea, true enemies. But when you look at Cuba and the United States, you're looking at countries that are more like an estranged couple, and they're finally getting back together after 50 years. So it's my job to try to rebuild that bridge and reconnect the two countries.
Chris Clunan has a master's degree in Cuban studies and now works for a cultural travel company that tries to build bridges between Americans and Cubans.
The biggest obstacle that the United States faces domestically is Congress. President Obama can only do so much since the embargo was officially written into law in the 90s. A lot of the restrictions have to be lifted by Congress.
In 2010, Cuba embarked on discussions to update the country's economic model, defined largely by absolute state control, to one where individuals can own businesses, buy and sell their homes, and with technology slowly beginning to open up.
Look at what Raul Castro has done since he came to power just a couple of years ago, even before Obama made the détente announcement. You look at things like Wi-Fi hotspots. They have 35 of them around Havana now in 2015. I was here in 2012. It was a dream if you thought you were going to get a Wi-Fi hotspot in Havana. I'm able to use my American cell phone now, so I'm able to text back home. These things are, they're revolutionary, really, for the Cuban people to be able to access the internet and really open up to the outside world.
But Cuba's president has long held the view that change will be slow. A view shared by local poetry teacher Isabel Diaz, who agreed to take a ride around Havana with me in this classic Chevy. One he says is meant more for tourists than locals.
On the ground, how have things changed since the United States and Cuba began talking again in December last year?
Yes, I think there are huge expectations about this, but I'm not quite sure that everything is going to happen that fast as everybody's expecting. I think the changes will come much more slower than we expect, and maybe not in the way that some of us expect, because it's not a public debate. People don't decide how the changes are going to happen.
Technology, for one, remains exclusive and expensive, despite slowly liberalizing the space for people to get online.
It is happening right now, but not at the speed that we need. The cost is very expensive. It's very expensive for everybody to access to internet right now. You need to have a device, a telephone or a laptop or something, and it's very expensive to buy those devices here. And after you have the devices, you need to pay for connection. Right now, you need to pay to CUC, which is equivalent to $2 for 1 hour internet. And my salary is $15 a month. So if I earn $15, I cannot pay $2 to connect to internet.
Diaz says he expects the country to embrace over time a more Chinese or Vietnamese economic model, a form of state capitalism he feels is far too centralized.
They need the opportunity to organize themselves, for everything, for political reasons, for economic reasons, for every reason possible. Common people need to be allowed to be organized. So that's the part of the democracy that I like. The democracy that everybody knows, which we all know that it doesn't work very well in the world. We are very we have criticisms toward that kind of democracy, but we also understand that we need some democracy here so people can organize themselves, so they can establish what we want, how do we want to make these changes.
What sort of changes are underway politically? Is it becoming a more free society? There are questions about human rights, certainly from a US perspective. What do you say to that?
The Cubans will tell you that they're going to do it their own way. A lot of outsiders will compare them to China or Vietnam. And I think that's accurate to a large extent, but Cuba certainly doesn't have the manufacturing power that China has. They don't have the population size of China. So you'll see some similarities in that. You're still going to see a tight control over civil society when it comes to free elections and freedom of speech and anything that's critical towards the government. But economically, you're going to see a liberalization. You're going to see the state capitalism come in.
call of the House is ordered.
And with pressure building on the United States Congress to lift the embargo and the restrictions it places on foreign companies and countries doing business in Cuba, issues like U.S. control of Guantanamo Bay also loom large.
How do you have normalized relations with a country that you're forcibly occupying? So that's certainly something that's going to need to be resolved. And you also look at it from the Cuban perspective. You know, they're very excited to have the Americans coming back, and business-wise, but there's always this shadow of colonialism that plays into the relationship. Where the U.S. really ran the show here for a long time, from about 1900 until Castro came in. So the Cubans are going to take it slowly, and they want the U.S. to come in and come back on their terms.
A work in progress for a country now venturing into uncharted territory.
So, amidst the renewed global interest in Cuba, be that over US-Cuba relations that continue to be overshadowed by the embargo, or the social and economic reforms that are currently underway on the island nation, what is clear is that change is coming to Cuba. What is less clear is how quickly and how deep those changes will be. Sherwin Bryce-Pease, SABC News, Havana, Cuba.